Did you just find out there are endangered species on your land? You'll likely need to put together a habitat conservation plan. And in today's video, we have the top things you should know. Number 1, what is a habitat conservation plan or an HCP? An HCP is a document that's designed to help you avoid and reduce impacts that your activities may have on endangered species. Number 2, when is a habitat conservation plan drafted? HCPs are usually drafted when a landowner, or sometimes local unit of government, applies for an incidental take permit from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Number 3, what is an incidental take permit? An incidental take permit is a permit issued to a private individual, corporation, or local unit of government who wishes to conduct activities on their land that may affect animal species that are threatened or endangered under the Endangered Species Act. Number 4, what are the requirements of a habitat conservation plan? First of all, you must identify all species of concern on your property. You must then assess any impacts that your activities may have to these species. After this, you're going to list out all of the measures you will take to minimize those impacts on the identified species. You'll also need to show proof of funding to guarantee that you can implement these measures, and you'll need to list out procedures on how to deal with unforeseen circumstances. Number 5, what is the overall process for applying for an incidental take permit? First, of course, decide whether you need an incidental take permit. And you can contact your local U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service office for help with this. You then develop your proposed habitat conservation plan and submit it along with your permit application. The habitat conservation plan will be reviewed by agency staff, and staff will likely issue comments that you'll need to respond to. Hopefully, after some back and forth, you will receive your permit and you can begin work. But the process doesn't stop there. Throughout the duration of your work, you will need to coordinate with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to ensure that monitoring occurs and that the plan is being followed correctly. And finally, when you're done, you're going to work with the service to close out your permit and the project. And finally, number 6, what are the pros and cons of the incidental take process? With an incidental take permit, you can engage in activities that would otherwise be unlawful under the Endangered Species Act because you are minimizing and mitigating your impacts. There's also what is called the no surprises policy. This means you will be exempt from making future changes to an approved plan if unforeseen circumstances come up, like say the service finds an additional species on your property. But of course, as you probably guess, there are some cons to the process. Primarily, it is time-consuming and can hold up a project for a bit. And of course, you are limited to only those actions permitted under the plan. So that covers the basics of habitat conservation plans. Now at this point, you may be thinking, sure, saving endangered species is nice, but aren't we in the midst of a housing crisis? Shouldn't we be prioritizing construction? Well, when done right, a habitat conservation plan can both allow for new construction and save key open space. Just take a look at Tucson. If there is one thing Tucson is known for, it's sprawl. But it wasn't always this way. When my mother grew up in Tucson's wild edge, it was just a small town surrounded by saguaro-studded mountains. Yet it didn't remain that way for long. With the advent of air conditioning, people soon discovered Tucson's glorious climate and oddly lush, wildflower-dotted valleys. First, in the 1960s and 70s, artists, writers, and hippies enchanted by the desert were drawn to Tucson. Then, in the 1980s and 90s, came the retirees, and then yet again, more retirees. Most came for the climate, but many also came to glory in Tucson's natural abundance. Yet, as my mom said, all of these people ended up loving the desert to death. You could see it in the little things, like the loss of a herd of bighorn sheep from the Catalina Mountains. But you could also clearly see it from the air as the mass of red-tiled roofs slowly consumed more and more open space. As one writer said, though, every community has a tipping point. In Tucson, it was the pygmy owl. In 1997, the little raptor was designated as an endangered species, bringing to an abrupt halt the construction of a school. The school's delay proved to be the fuse that ignited long-simmering tensions over runaway development in the city. The shouting, finger-pointing, and even fistfights that broke out in public meetings around the school and the Owl so scarred local politicians that they decided to do something about it. Pima County Administrator Chuck Huckleberry and his staff decided to proactively put together a long-term multi-species habitat conservation plan before future endangered species designations would rile the community. The 7-year effort put together a plan that would protect 54 species and also use bond financing to acquire hundreds of thousands of acres of open space. But the most impressive part of the plan was its widespread support. Voters overwhelmingly approved the bond measure to acquire additional land. And even developers came on board, in large part because the plan gave certainty around future land use regulations, while also exempting developers from prosecution under future endangered species listings. And if it's one thing that developers like, it's certainty. So the plan allows higher density development to occur in said areas while also preserving hundreds of thousands of acres of open space for current and future generations to come. As the plan's architect, Maven Marie Bahane, said, "The plan may have been stoked by resentment over declining quality of life, but it showed us who we are as a community and what kind of world we want to live in." But what do you think? Do you have any stories about habitat conservation plans? Let us know in the comments. Did you like this video? You're going to love our Gokce Land Due Diligence program. Check it out at gokcecapital.com/glad. And while you're at our website, don't forget to explore our $1 down listings at gokcecapital.com/listings. And also don't forget to like and subscribe. Until next time.